Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore!
You know, I don't have a lot of guests whose first question is, what's your favorite opera house? But returning champion Tricia Brouk is exactly the right person to ask that question, because she's just this storied Renaissance human, a luminary in her space. And she started out as a professional ballet dancer in Paris, in Austria, all over the world. And what an incredible origin story for her. And she's totally transformed her world and helped so many people learn how to tell their stories. She is a choreographer, a documentarian, an international award-winning film director, and the author of a book called The Influential Voice, Saying What You Mean for Lasting Legacy. She's done TEDx. She does a speaker salon in New York. She has something called The Big Talk and the 7-Step Guide to Transformational Speaking. All of these are links in the episode description. But she's back here live in the studio for the second time. I just adore spending time with her. She brings out the best in me. She brings out the best in people. And you are going to love this conversation. If you are one of those people who's interested in not just telling their story, but storytelling for the benefit of humanity, this is the episode for you. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the incalculably talented Tricia Brouk.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, did we start?
I don't know.
You just started the show.
I'm just so grateful to be back.
It's good to have you back.
It's always nice to be asked back.
Tricia Brouk.
Hello.
You ever get B-R-O-O-K all the time?
I get Tricia Brouk a lot.
Tricia Brouk.
She's a film director, and I also get Tricia Brouk, actually. Tricia Brouk directs a lot of TV and movies, and people always think that I'm directing the latest Downton Abbey or Bridgerton.
Not a bad problem to have, I suppose.
It's not. She's amazing. I'm in good company.
That was not one of the questions ChatGPT asked me to ask you. Who you've been misconstrued? I can't say the word misconstrued for.
I get Julianne Moore. I can
see that one. That's a compliment.
It is. I take it. She's stunning. So yeah. I accept. I receive.
Well, I'm glad to have you back. It's been a while, but I think why it's more important than ever, especially post-COVID, post-digital. You know, we've the whole universe is now online. I don't know a single bastion of this, at least this country, you know, ignorantly speaking, as a coastal elite that isn't living and breathing on their screens now. And even this explosion of content creators, right? Whatever happened to just being a person that did art, right? We're all content creators now. But my first question was, and this actually was a ChatGPT question, what's your favorite opera house?
My favorite opera house is, I would say, the Paris Opera House. I performed there with Lucinda Childs in probably 1999, and the smell of it felt so important. It just smelled like history, and I was so honored to be able to be in that space.
How many people these days knew or know that you were a dancer at the onset of your career?
I think more people know now because I talk about it more often. I think being a dancer has enabled me to be a very successful entrepreneur because of my discipline and my high risk tolerance and my grit. So I think more people know about it now. But I want to just touch on the fact that you said, Matthew, everything is digital. And for your listeners, they probably know that your guests come to a studio. So we're not looking at each other on a Zoom screen. We're actually in person. And that's something that is so important. And as far as content creators go, yes, we're both artists. I'm an artist. I'm a creator. I've always been a prolific creator. And I think that there's something that's going to be shifting and that's going to take us back to being in person. And I'm a letter writer.
I'm sorry, pardon?
I'm a letter writer. I write people.
With a wax seal and everything?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Carrier pigeons, the whole thing?
I love to write people letters, handwritten letters. And so I think, yes, everything's online and everything is digital. And if we can go back to, and I'm not trying to sound like the olden days,
right.
I'm simply saying if we can go back to that personal touch of being literally in the room with someone and signing our name to something, there's something that's really magical about that interaction and intimacy.
Do you think that is confined to a Gen X nostalgia mentality like us?
I don't know.
I'm leaning 70-30 that this is a Gen X nostalgia mentality because I don't think the rubber band's going to snap back the way it used to.
Maybe. Maybe it's nostalgia. Maybe it is my desire to have someone open something that has my fingerprints and my intimacy and my handwriting and I love writing letters, and I will always do that.
Look, we're talking about the analog days, right? And I'm not, I'll make a word up, non-pessimistic about it. That was so obscure. But you're right. People do ask me all the time, your show is fantastic. What makes it great? And it's like, hey, I've been just doing it since 2007. No one realizes, like you said, people don't even remember I play piano anymore. They just know me for this, which is fine. Right. But when I tell people, they're like, oh, would you like some help with your podcast? I'm like, no, thanks. Without ego. I've just been doing this.
Yeah, I got this. I'm good.
But yeah, I tell people I do it live. I physically have a person in the studio. I look them in the eyes. We have, body coordination and line of sight, and we can bounce off each other. It's very theatrical in that sense, right?
Yeah.
So, all right. So I'm back. I flipped it. 70-30. Let's go analog.
Okay.
Because we want to physically be in person, although they're going to listen on their phones anyway. So
that's fine. That's totally. We can all coexist.
No double cassette decks in our garage anymore.
Oh, the mixtape. I still have some mixtapes in my storage unit, I'm sure.
I have mixtapes from the 90s too.
Yeah, that was so fun.
I feel like I should do a show like what's on my mixtape.
I love that idea.
Let's do the show.
Okay.
All right. Next time you're here, we'll reveal our mixtape secrets.
Perfect.
I know a lot of Bryan Adams and Journey and probably Chicago around there.
I was more, who was I? I was all the alternative bands way back when.
Like R.E.M.?
R.E.M., oh man.
Cranberries?
Oh yeah, Cranberries. Okay. All the alternatives.
All right. Lilith Fair, you go there?
I never went to Lilith Fair.
Is that a checkbox you wish you checked off?
No, I was busy dancing and touring around the world.
Well, hence my first question. I don't get to ask what's your favorite opera house to many of my guests. It's a fascinating answer.
I also really loved dancing in Vienna at the Vienna Opera House. And one of the reasons that I loved dancing there was it was a surprise. Lucinda Childs created a body of work called Dance 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And it was choreographed to Philip Glass. And Saul LeWitt created a film. This was created in 1979. He created a film that was projected onto a scrim. And for those of you who aren't in theater, a scrim is a translucent piece of fabric that goes from downstage to the ceiling, and the dancers dance upstage of it, and you can light the scrim so that it looks like it's a screen, or you can light behind the scrim and the scrim becomes translucent. This particular body of work, the Saul LeWitt film of the dancers from 1979, would be projected onto the scrim, and then the dancers behind the scrim were lit, and they were dancing in real time with the dancers from 1979.
Wow.
And
what a superimposition.
It was incredible. And Lucinda asked me to be her understudy for the dance one that she did, and it was a solo. If anybody has ever listened to Philip Glass, you can't count it.
Except 4 minutes and 32 seconds of silence.
Yes.
Google it, people.
It's incredibly hard to count. You really just have to memorize the entire score. And we were in Austria. And
not really danceable music, Philip Glass.
well, when you know how to memorize it.
I mean, like 4/4. It's not like rave music.
No, exactly. And speaking to you as a musician, you know what I'm talking about. It's not traditional waltz or 4/4 anything.
And it's like astonishingly atonal.
It's really hard, really challenging. Lucinda fell and broke her wrist. And so I had to go on for her. And it was one of the most stressful, exhilarating experiences of my dance career. And it was at the Vienna Opera House. And I had white trousers, a white long sleeve crew neck leotard. We all had our hair back in a low bun. And when Lucinda performed this piece, and she had been performing it since 1979, and this was in 1999. For 20 years, she'd been performing this. She wore little gold hoop earrings. And I will never forget, in my dressing room, the day I was going to go on was a bouquet of flowers and a box of gold hoop earrings that she gave to me. It was so special, Matthew.
What a moment.
It was unbelievable.
Who gets to live that moment? That's incredible.
I have goosebumps just thinking about it. And I nailed it. I had to be exactly in unison with her because her image was projected onto the screen in front of me, the size of the opera house. So little me in the back, making sure that I was in complete unison and in sync with the film of her from floor to ceiling. And
how big is the house?
Probably 2,500 people.
That's incredible.
It was incredible. And I remember nailing it and feeling like I can accomplish anything. I can do anything from here going forward. And they took a picture of me and I was on the front page of the newspaper.
Wow. In Paris?
In Vienna.
Oh, sorry, wrong city. Right. It's all Europe. No, it's not all Europe.
It was really special. Something I'll never forget.
What an incredible story. It's always like the theater and the stage kids, right? We're like a unique batch.
There's something that's so magical and humble, and when you are catapulted onto a stage in front of an audience and you have to just figure it out, you become the best version of yourself.
I had a moment like that, which again, I haven't spoken about forever, that I'll probably just write an article about it. I'm in like this nostalgia phase. Like no one knows that I was around 20 years ago doing this. So like, you're that guy? Yeah, I'm that guy that was doing this 20 years ago. And this was in 2002. So I was like still kind of like fresh meat out of the cancer factory. I was still just living a day job and trying to play every now and then. And I had no nonprofit. There was nothing there. It was just me like fixing computers and doing things for like the ad industry. And I gave a concert for the American Cancer Society Relay for Life at NYU as of course, I'll come play piano at your fundraiser. And there was somebody there from the National American Cancer Society out of Atlanta. And they said, we would like you to perform and open up, get ready for this, an event called Celebration on the Hill, which was a 30,000 person, all 50 states represented from the chapters of those states, on the National Mall on the first grass area south of the Capitol building.
That's amazing.
By the pool, right? By that little oval thing. And I have photos. It really happened. Like who took pictures back then? But I had photos like the cameras with the little things. And I performed. I opened up for 30,000 people.
What did that feel like in your body?
I had, first of all, it was like 24 years. Wait, math. It was a long time ago. I can't do math. But I just had confidence back then about that. I had nothing else to do in my life. Like cancer stole it away from me. I tried to get it back. And I had no qualms getting up there. I didn't have, Billy Joel's shadow on a scrim behind me, for example. But that would have been very different, playing like, Angry Young Man or something like that. But I just got up there and I've never looked upon a sea of people that large before. I think the largest audience I'd played for before then was about 2,000. for like a Lucent. Remember Lucent Technology?
Yeah.
I played at one of their annual sales meetings as like the token cancer kid. But what a moment that was to be up there and perform for that many people. So I have not an apples to apples per se, but I completely like just spirit to spirit, artist to artist. I get it. And what check boxes do we get to tick off in our lives?
Yeah, it's very special. We're very lucky.
Yeah, but it's going back to the theater kids, right? Like, I mean, it's all the arts. You did all sorts of dance, modern, ballet?
I was a classically trained modern dancer. So I studied ballet and was dancing on point all through college and early into being in New York. And then when I realized I could make money being a classically trained modern dancer, because most modern dancers, they were not wearing unitards. They were wearing baggy clothes and not really extending through their feet. And I was classically trained, so I had really good line. And when I started dancing with modern dance companies, I was getting tons of reviews. And you know this, actors get reviews. Dancers do not. The choreographers are who get the reviews when the New York Times goes to see performances. And I was getting all of these reviews because I could dance like a classically trained ballet dancer, but I was doing modern dance. So it was very unique that I was kind of catapulted onto the scene as this virtuosic modern dancer.
So when did you transition to choreographer, or was that always in your blood the whole time and it just kind of came out, or no?
No, I never wanted to teach dance. I never wanted to be a choreographer. When I stopped getting auditions, I went to Europe. And I toured around Europe and I created my itinerary around all of the dance companies that I wanted to audition for. Ballet Frankfurt, William Forsythe, Rotterdam Dance Theater, all the dance companies, Pina Bausch, all the dance companies.
Name dropper.
I know, dropping names. And so I created this itinerary with a backpack. And that was amazing because I was a young, hungry dancer traveling Europe alone with a backpack. I never paid for any food. I was taken out to dinner and lunch the entire time I was there because I had this interesting story. I'm touring Europe to work for a dance company. And I remember sitting in a cafe in Paris, having some cheese and wine, looking—
As one does.
Yes. Looking across the square at the Paris Opera House, saying to myself, and we just talked about manifestation on my way in today, I looked across and I said, I'm going to dance there. And I went back to New York, not knowing what's going to happen. And that's when I landed the job with Lucinda Childs. And within several months, I was back at that theater dancing there.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think this is, it's like picking your favorite child, but this could be one of my favorite openers of any guest I've ever had. And you've been on the show already. We learn something new about each other every time you're here.
Thank you.
Well, let's take a quick break because I really want to get into how you found your way towards sort of being on the other side of the stage and coaching people onto how to have that sort of that gumption to know that it's okay, permission to be you to the universe.
I love it.
All right, we'll be right back. So let's get to how you became who you are today, which is, multifaceted, cosmopolitan, jack of all trades of the arts, and I don't know, Renaissance human. I'm running out of metaphors. Today you are a luminary in the, how do you tell your story? How do you get on stage? How do you be of or like a me with the sense of confidence and the shedding of your sort of limiting beliefs? We could use a manifestation term at this point now. How did that happen?
Well, thank you for
all the metaphors.
Yes, and calling me a luminary. That's pretty special. I received that.
You heard it here first, folks.
Letting it wash over me. I love it. Per your other question, did I always want to move into choreography? I did not. And I was planning to retire from dance and potentially pursue a career in physical therapy. I've always been an entrepreneur. I founded a fitness company, which still exists.
Wait, can you name drop that?
Sure, it's called Brouk Moves.
Wow.
Yeah. So I have clients who've been with me for over 30 years. And
How old are you? 29? Pretty young to start that company.
I did start it young. I am 54. And so it's been around forever. And my clients are incredible. And I don't train them anymore. I have trainers to do that. But I started a fitness company so that I could tour with Lucinda Childs. And before passive income was a thing, I had passive income.
Trendsetter.
Yes, always. So I was planning to transition out of dance because I wasn't getting the jobs that I wanted. And I had just toured Europe and I wasn't going to take some small job in New York City where I didn't really like the choreographer. And then all of a sudden I get a call. John Turturro is looking for a choreographer.
Oh, just as one does. Yeah. I see him every Thursday. He's my friend. No, he's not.
So I got a call and he said, will you come to Mark Morris Studios and we can have a conversation about this feature film that I'm choreographing or that I'm directing. And I thought, okay, I have nothing to lose. So I go to Mark Morris Dance Studios, and as I'm walking down the hall towards whatever 5C, I pass Susan Sarandon.
Okay, I just crashed on the floor.
And I was I'm speechless. That was Susan Sarandon, who is incredible and so talented, and oh my gosh, where am I going right now? And I walk in and I meet John Turturro, and he gives me an assignment. He says, I'm working on this film. It's a musical, and Kate Winslet is playing the lead character, Tula, and she catches fire, and the New York City firefighters have to put her out. Can you improv that for me? And I'm going to have some firefighters come in, and can you just show me what that would look like?
Like on the spot. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I start.
Just an average Tuesday for you.
Puts on Buena Vista Social Club, and I start improvising what it would look like if I was a woman on fire. And the New York City firefighters, the real guys, not actors, they created this conga line and followed me around the room and pretended to put out the fire. I had no idea what I was doing, except I just let the creativity come through. And before I knew it, I was on the set, on location with Kate Winslet, Susan Sarandon, Christopher Walken, Steve Buscemi, Bobby Cannavale, my dear friend, the late James Gandolfini, Eddie Izzard, choreographing my first feature film.
What film was this?
Romance and Cigarettes.
Oh my.
You can watch it on Netflix.
I know the movie.
Yeah.
God rip James Gandolfini.
Yeah, yeah. And that was when I realized that I could choreograph and that I could channel the goddess. And what I mean by that is I would go home and I would go to sleep and I would wake up with the choreography. And then I would write it all down and I would go to the studio and I would teach it to the actors. And I loved it. I loved being on set, and being on John's set was like a master class or an MFA program. He's an incredible director. He gets the most incredible performances out of his actors. It's a safe set. He's crazy energy. And the idea that I was choreographing this film, it was so fun because the actors were terrified. So I got to be playful and silly to make them feel comfortable and safe so that we could shoot this crazy movie.
Wait, professional actors were... Really? Okay.
Yeah. Are you being sarcastic?
No. Like, is that a real thing? Professional actors get like stage fright?
Well, when it comes to dancing, every time.
Okay.
And having been on set many times.
Unless they're Hugh Jackman.
Even then, there's
He's a good dancer.
I haven't worked with Hugh, but he is a great dancer. But it's this whole idea of being uncomfortable outside of your comfort zone. You can't hide behind a line. You have to be very physical and go for it. So I moved into choreography and loved it. It wasn't something that was on my radar. Started working in film, television, and theater as a choreographer, and then transitioned into being a director because I wanted to make my own work. And just like a dancer, I was creating my own opportunities. So I started creating my own opportunities by writing musicals and directing my own shows. and directed burlesque, directed musicals about mental health challenges. I directed a musical called, can I curse on this show?
I was going to ask you about the You're Gorgeous, I Love Your Shirt.
That's a documentary about mental health that's a film that I made, but I also choreographed, wrote, and directed Committed, which is a musical about 8 patients in a psych ward and what happens in one day.
Wait, and yes, you can curse on the show.
And I also wrote 50 Shades of Fucked Up. So I did a parody musical about the 50 Shades book.
That's kind of on brand. I like it. I approve this message.
Well, I was so offended when that whole book came out because a young girl in college who doesn't have a computer, has never had sex, and wants her boyfriend to beat her, I'm going to have to say no to that.
Okay. I'm going to just stand on this side and nod my head out of my element. I'm unqualified to comment. All right. I the most important thing that I find, there's so many things that are desirable about you and your aura. My world, the oncology world, the patient world is, I'm writing an article about this right now, about this exploitation of patient stories. But there's still so much value to those stories. And now with the democratization of the internet, everyone can tell their story. But I wanted your hot take on is there a difference between telling your story and storytelling?
Great question. And absolutely. How many times have you been at a party or at an event where somebody is pontificating about their life? That is telling a story because they like hearing themselves talk. And when you are a storyteller, it means you're painting a picture so that your audience or your listener can feel something that makes them want to behave differently or think differently. And that's really, for me, in my humble opinion, the difference.
I agree completely. It's the art of the theater, because no one cares what you have to say.
Right.
It's how you make them feel. And that, it's okay that shocks people. Not everyone is a stage person. We are all not like congenital thespians at birth, right? We have it or we don't, and we learn it.
Yeah.
But again, it's this notion of, I want to tell my story, and please go for it. And I have nothing against the people that want to write their books and do their thing. I don't believe there's malevolence and they wanted to hear their own voices in their heads. A lot of it is cathartic because they've been through trauma,
right? Which
is reasonable. But the flip side is where you live, which is if people want the confidence to not just write it for themselves or say it for themselves or espouse to the universe, and you want an audience to feel something. Talk to me about that process of getting people possibly over that emotional limiting belief that it's not about them, it's about the crowd.
A lot of speakers come to me with the limiting belief that what they have to say does not matter, but they feel this white hot burning desire that they need to share their story in service of humanity. And that's where I come in. And that's where I support them in active listening so they can share with me, what is it that you want to tell an audience? Why do you want to share this information? And how can we craft it so that it can be of service to the audience and not just you sharing your story because you think it's important for the audience to hear? And an example of that I've shared multiple times, but it's such a good example, I continue to share it. Kristen Smedley came to me and said, I want to do a talk about rare eye disease. I have 3 kids, 2 were born blind. I started a rare eye disease foundation and I want to talk about it and raise awareness. And I said, okay, great. Let's have an active listening session. And we talked and I asked questions and we talked and I asked questions and I kept asking questions. And by the end of the active listening session, I said, Kristen, this talk is not about rare eye disease. It's about how you learn to see the world through the eyes of your children. And why that's a shift is because she could have talked about the trauma of her children being born blind and how that affected her and what she was doing to advocate for them. But when she turned it into, my kids are skiers, my kids ride horses, my kids don't care if they're blind, it was me who cared. And when they taught me to see through their eyes, my compassion and empathy completely expanded.
Now that's a way to tell the story and not storytell.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I had a question for you is you've done some TEDx training. Is TEDx or TED still the gold standard, or have we democratized the need for that not to be a thing anymore? Is it relevant?
It depends if you desire to wear the crown of TED or TEDx. I think that it became problematic because they exploded so quickly, and there were so many TEDx licenses that have been given out that they couldn't have, there was no quality control. There was so many that it was difficult to have a quality. And so I always tell my speakers, if you're going to do a TEDx event, make sure that you have vetted the organizer. Ask about lighting and sound, ask about video, ask about whether or not they've produced an event before. Because if
or watch the videos that they've done before and see if they're decent,
exactly,
right?
Because the thing about the TED brand is speakers don't get paid and the producers don't get paid. So everybody's donating their time and money. However, in order to maintain your license, you're required to provide the videos because they get paid with advertising and sponsors on YouTube. So you're required to upload those videos. If they're terrible, that's out of your control.
Right.
And you can't get them down.
And then that's the worst because you may be stellar in your presentation, but no one wants to watch crappy video.
No one.
Or listen to podcasts on Zoom.
Yeah.
Ouch. Burn. Sorry. I had to. I'm an aloof elitist. All right, I have your book here. I'm going to pick it up and it'll make noise. But this was not in existence on your first trip around the sun on the show.
It wasn't?
I don't think it came out yet. This was 2020, 2021?
2020.
Maybe
2021 April, I think.
Okay.
I wrote it in 2020.
I think our show was after that. All right. I'm going to rescind that, but keep it on, Kyle. All right. The influential voice saying what you mean for lasting legacy, exactly emblematic of your story about the woman whose children were blind. Give me another example. I love the way you were able to help. Was she receptive, by the way, to that different way of approaching it? Was that therapy for her?
It was a complete transformation for her, and she got the clarity that she needed on how to talk about this. And she actually went to the FDA and got funding for research for her kids, and then had to have the conversation. We were getting research, and they're like, but I like being blind. I like my life.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting. So when you learn how to talk about your story in a way that can create funding, create policy change, create a movement. That's why I do this. That's why I do this work. Another example of storytelling is one of my clients, my former client, Marie Elizabeth Molly.
Who was on my show.
Yes, that's
Lovely
right.
woman.
Yes. I send all of my amazing speakers to you. She said, I want to talk about relationships because that's what she was doing at the time as a relationship coach. And I guided her away from that because I thought there's more there and I don't know what it is yet. So let's talk about what it is. Let's continue the active listening session and figure out what it is you want to talk about. And she and I got on a session and said, I just got back from Cabo. It was such a fun trip. She's an underwater photographer and scuba diver. So she was telling me about the seahorses and how the man seahorse takes the eggs from the female seahorse and holds them in its mouth until they give birth. And the other sea life, they're all impregnating each other, and it's not male, female. It's this completely fluid thing. And I said, this is your talk. What sea life can teach us about gender fluidity. And the reason that's so important is because the kind of impact that my community and that the speakers that I work with want to have goes way beyond just giving a talk. It's our mission and vision at the Big Talk is to unite humanity through speech. So when you think about Marie Elizabeth's talk about sea life teaching us about gender fluidity, what that means is a young person who may want to have a conversation with their family about their gender fluidity and identity and has fear around the conversation, they can share this talk as a catalyst for opening up the conversation in a safe way. That's why this work is so important. That's why storytelling can have the kind of impact that will change and even save a life.
So you offer something called the 7-Step Guide to Transformational Speaking on your website. What can people expect if they sign up for that?
You can expect a simple, straightforward 7 steps of how to have more confidence, how to walk into a room, how to use inspiration, it's a very straightforward how to encourage you to grab something like that. And the other thing that would be super helpful when it comes to storytelling is the Uncertain to Unstoppable on-demand masterclass. That's new since we last had our conversation.
Uncertain to Unstoppable.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And that's all about purpose, values, and mission. And if you're not clear on what your purpose, your values, and your mission are, then you're limiting your ability to communicate effectively.
Yeah, it's just so important to have this conversation because so many people who listen to the show, people I interact with, people I speak to in audiences, again, I have so much empathy for them wanting to take this trauma and turn it into some purpose.
Yeah.
But again, there's a balance between recognizing that you're doing it for your own catharsis is one thing, but if you really want, to your point, for that story to help somebody else open a conversation around their trauma, it's a different approach to understanding who needs to hear you say what.
Yeah, and going back to the Unstoppable masterclass, it is going to give you the foundation to start to share the story in a way that's of service and not just you trying to work through your trauma. And that's triciabrouk.com/unstoppable.
BROUK.
Yes.
Not BROOK like the water elements on Earth.
Correct.
All right. One more break. We'll be right back with Tricia Brouk. Quick third segment bonus because I can't not stop talking to you. That was a quadruple negative, but I don't care. We grew up in the 80s when walk it off was therapy and, get over it and whatever. And who gives a shit, and fresh air therapy and, whatever, go eat some dirt, whatever the hell it was, have a Twinkie. And today mental health is like a trope. It means too much, but I'm just grateful I don't have any of that. I check other terrible boxes and other parts of my family have different challenges. But what's your take on this and how it applies to what you wanted to accomplish? We say the dent in the universe when you moved into dealing with trauma and bullying with your craft.
I want to help people share their story in service of humanity. And I do not experience mental health in my personal life or in my family either. However, I have deep compassion and empathy for others. Therefore, I attract people who want to talk about things like mental health, who want to talk about things like right livelihood. When I decided to create Committed, a show about mental health, I didn't go in actively thinking, I'm going to create a show so that young people can watch this and not feel alone. That was the byproduct, and I was very pleased that we got it right and that the people who came to see Committed said, you got it right. And there is a suicide in my musical. I went there. When I find that I meet speakers or I meet subjects, if you will, who share with me their trauma, and I feel like I can tell their story, then I invite them to let me do that. And You're Gorgeous, I Love Your Shirt, an inside look at bullying and mental health was that example. I had a client, a speaker, who was sharing with me some personal stuff about her daughter being bullied at school. And I said, if you get permission from your daughter and your family signs off on this, and I will give you final cut, I would be honored to tell your story in a short documentary. And they talked about it as a family and they said yes. And the film premiered in LA. And it's an opportunity for people to see that this young, gorgeous, blonde, white girl who looked like Barbie was being bullied at school. And she attempted suicide twice. And that was important for me to show because we have this bias around people who are suffering, what they look like, where they live. And the reality is it is pervasive and anyone can be going through this.
Do you feel like we've always been there and had this and it was like undercover for years and now we have societal permission to all be exposed to our trauma? Or has the internet made it better or worse? Or are we just softer as a species? I'll just be rough on that question.
I appreciate you being rough on it because I think that there's a problem with everybody sharing their trauma on social media in a manipulative way. And that's something that's super dangerous, not only for your audience, but for you. If you put yourself out there and you're exposed in that way and you get cyberbullied, that's very dangerous and it's real. I don't think it's new. Women were called hysterical way back when, and when it was when menopause. So I think that we have more information, but we have to be careful with the information that we're given.
Yep. Well said. All right. Super quick lightning round these. So for the listeners, I'm starting a new segment called What Would AI Ask Trish? Actually, it's called What Would AI Ask My Guests, but your name is Trish. So this is what AI thinks I should ask you. What's the strangest compliment you ever received from a speaker or audience member after a talk?
That's a very strange question. I like your shoes.
That's all they had to say. Not great performance, but nice shoes. Okay. Have you ever saved a public speaker from an epic fail moment on stage mid-performance?
No, but I have had a debrief with a speaker who had an epic fail, and he apologized to me right after.
Okay. You've already disclosed your many, many talents. Do you have an awkward, weird, like game night talent that you would like to disclose here on the air?
I love to sing while Joe plays the piano in our home.
That's not a talent. That's Michelle Pfeiffer and the Baker Boys. Like, can you like bend your thumb backwards or something?
No.
Okay.
I can speak a little Russian. Меня зовут Trishечka.
All right. I'll allow it. All right. Last AI question. Let's see here. Who's the most unexpected person you ever work with? I probably jumped to tour at this point because he was the first. Or who? All right. Name drop. Most unexpected person you ever work with.
When I was invited to choreograph Romance and Cigarettes and James Gandolfini wanted me to be his solo choreographer, that was the most unexpected thing that I could have ever imagined.
What a treat.
Yeah.
What a treat. Wow. All right. All metaphors aside, I have more metaphors for you.
Yay.
Just, they're the same. Renaissance, talent, luminary. You've done so much with your life, and we didn't even get to manifesting, and that's maybe the third episode of the show that we'll do together. But it's such a treat to have you on the show. I hope the listeners, that's you people, storytelling is an art. It's an art form. And as much as it is personal therapy for your trauma and grief, if you are interested in learning how to hone that and manifest it into something meaningful for society to help others outside of you, I highly encourage you to check out Tricia Brouk, BROUK.com. You can buy the book anywhere, Amazon?
Yeah, it's everywhere.
All right. The Influential Voice, Saying What You Mean for Lasting Legacy. We'll put a link in the show notes. And what was the 7 steps thing on your website?
7-Step Guide to Transformational Speaking.
Tricia Brouk. I don't know. Too many boxes to check. Thank you for coming on the show again.
Thank you, Matthew. I appreciate you.
Out of Patience with Matthew Zachary is a production of Matthew Zachary Worldwide. The executive producer is Matthew Zachary. It is mixed and edited by Kyle Moore. If you like the show, ratings and reviews are always welcome wherever you get your podcasts. If you have guest suggestions or would like to learn more about sponsorship opportunities, email podcast@matthewzachary.com. For more information about Matthew Zachary and Matthew Zachary Worldwide, visit matthewzachary.com.